what is going on, everybody out there? This is Jakejames Lugo. Welcome to the channel, and welcome to a brand new episode of A Definitive Discussion Rebooted, where I bring on phenomenal individuals from all over the place around the internet to talk about gaming and a whole bunch of other cool, great stuff. If you guys haven't been checking out the show thus far, definitely go back and check out some of the other episodes. There's a lot of great content and cool guests that we've had on the show. But today, I have a very special guest. I have James Chen, fighting game historian, fighting game commentator, awesome dude in the FGC, apparently, from what I've been told. So welcome to the show. It's awesome to finally chat it up and stuff. I've been a fan of your work for a while.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Thanks for having me on here. I'm always glad to, come and talk to, everybody that I can and basically sing the praises of the fighting game community.
Well, yeah, you've been out here doing some work. I mean, you did a lot of the VO stuff for the Street Fighter anniversary. I guess you could say like docu-series, like a bunch of videos that were pretty much chronicling the entirety of the Street Fighter legacy, for all the games and such. You've done commentary on a variety of different tournaments and stuff. So basically, you know a lot about fighting games.
Yeah. I mean, I always joke that I'm an old man, right? So I've been doing this for a while, but as old as I am, I've still done like over half of my life has been involved in doing fighting games. So that is a pretty decent amount of time that I've been playing and studying and talking about and discussing fighting games. So yeah, it's kind of a major factor of my life.
Yeah, it's pretty nice. But look at it this way: at least when you hit 21, you don't get a day older. You only are as old as you feel, pretty much. And you're still out here playing. You're still out here doing stuff. Again, you're attending a lot of different tournaments, doing commentary, being involved with that scene, which I think is very cool. And you're very open about it, which is very cool. But I want to know, and I think a lot of other people want to know, is it different for you now, now in this day and age, now that you're going to a lot of events in a little bit more of a professional and official capacity, as opposed to maybe when you were starting out back in the day when things were a little bit much more smaller scale as far as fighting games are concerned?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because, a lot of people ask me about how the FGC was back in the day and how it compares to what it's like now. And honestly, there just is no comparison. There literally was no FGC back then, right? So, I mean, it's hard to explain to people how different the world is with YouTube, with social media, with all this stuff. I mean, back in the day, like, we couldn't even see footage of players playing in Japan. We had no idea what they were doing back then. The only way we could is if someone somehow managed to record arcade footage, which wasn't easy back then, and recorded it to VHS. And then someone would actually have to copy VHS. It would get copied so much that the tracking would get all messed up and you couldn't barely even watch it and stuff. Like, getting information back then, even about the arcade that's like 20 miles from you, was almost impossible. You didn't know who was playing in any place.
True.
Every arcade that you went to was just a brand new venture. So there wasn't any SoCal scene. It was just your arcade. And there was another arcade. And then there was this place that they played at a video store. There was this place that they played at a bowling alley, et cetera, et cetera. There was really no like kind of community back then until, I mean, there definitely was a small one in Southern California, which was probably the biggest one, which is the World's Finest series. That was what became famous from. But for the most part, it's nothing. Like now and back then, it's night and day. Like, it's so hard to even talk about the comparisons between the two.
I feel you. Like, but for you individually, though, do you feel like a lot of the crazier moments or a lot of the fun times, obviously there was a lot of fun times back then for many people growing up within that scene. But for you now that things, obviously there's been a lot of time that's passed, there's all this stuff with social media, people are on YouTube and all these platforms. Do you feel like the times now are just made that much more special or that much more grand with the use of like all this other tech that we have at our disposal?
Oh, yeah. Don't get me wrong. Like, obviously, nostalgia about arcades, and I miss playing at arcades and the feeling of like trying to make a quarter last, and the implications of being like 30 people in line trying to knock Alex Valle off the CVS2 cabinet and stuff like that. Like, there's a lot of great things about the old arcade days, but honestly, like, nowadays, with the way that we can stream and we can have these events and we can just actually have people try to make a living off of this. It's very hard, but you have people like Mena RD and NuckleDo winning, hundreds and thousands of dollars at the Capcom Pro Tour. And then you just had Gotcha-kun win that amount of money and stuff like that. And, the fact that we're at this point, a lot of people, talk about, oh, it's selling out or it's esports or whatever like that.
A lot of terms thrown around.
Yeah, exactly. And but for me, it's just wonderful because I just feel like now people can be rewarded for the talent and the skill that they have, because people who are casually tied to the fighting game community really just, it's hard to grasp how much effort and how much skill it takes to be at that level. And to be able to reward people for that effort, I think is wonderful, is an amazing thing. As long as we can keep our soul, as long as the FGC can remain who we are, there is the talks about selling out and all that stuff. But, as long as I'm here, I'm going to try to make sure we try not to sell out as much as possible, despite the fact that people call me a shill sometimes here and there.
I don't see how you're a shill, though. I don't agree with that. Like, you're out here doing things. That's the thing, because a lot of people say, in my opinion, from my perspective, because I don't consider myself part of the FGC, or at least part of that community, because I look at other things, related to gaming and stuff, and I see always these parallels amongst individuals in different scenes when they're out here doing stuff, and a lot of people have varying different opinions about them, but for the most part, they're actually doing positive things, or they're doing things that are impactful. In your case, like, again, you're doing commentary, you're being part of this whole series looking at the history of Street Fighter. I'm pretty sure you've done other things with other fighting games as well. Like, there's a lot of different stuff out here that you've been doing and such. And I find that to do a lot of good, for the overall fighting game community as a whole. But I feel like a lot of those terms get really thrown around without really understanding the meaning behind them. Do you feel like sometimes, that gets a little bit overshadowing with a lot of the other like good stuff that usually either the fighting game community or just that whole scene really gets involved with?
Yeah, I mean, one of the interesting things about the fighting game community is there's a lot of times there's a reputation just from like a few specific events and stuff like that. And, I'm not trying to brush off any of those things. So there have been bad things that have happened in the FGC, and they are not good. And they're definitely like blights. And I'm not going to like be like, oh, well, that's just an exception. No,
Stuff happens.
They happen. But, for the most part, the FGC, like, a lot of times people go to events and, everybody who goes to events always says like, oh my gosh, I had this wonderful time. Everyone's so friendly. Again, I'm not trying to blow off the experiences of many people who have had bad times at events, but, those are situations, you mentioned about me trying to do things for the scene and everything like that. I'm trying to help acknowledge those situations and try to fix it as well. For example, like the FGC is wonderful in terms of ethnic diversity, but in terms of gender diversity, we have a lot of work to do, right? We're still trying to, make things a lot more friendlier for women and transgender people, and all sorts of things like that. So, there's still work to be done. At the same time, though, there's still a lot of great things about the fighting game community. And I just don't want people to hear those stories and think, well, the fighting game community is just extremely toxic. It's not the case at all. There's a lot of wonderful, wonderful people in there. There are the bad eggs that spoil the broth and everything like that. But there are also a lot of wonderful things about the fighting game community. And there is a reason why so many people have attach themselves to it and become so involved, because, there is a lot of good things in the fighting game community.
Now, do you find like sometimes, because when I look at the fighting game community as an outsider, as someone that just like covers games in general, rather than specific just to the fighting game genre, I find that sometimes a lot of the attention gets thrown on particular individuals or particular groups that try to be the loudest and try to represent the greater whole, when obviously it's a lot more diverse and a lot more complicated and more nuanced than anything else. But like sometimes, for example, like you'll get like some of those big players that are great at the game. They're phenomenal at what they play, but sometimes they just tend to make like really rather rash or silly decisions that end up getting put all over the place on like Kotaku or Polygon or IGN and stuff, gets reported on and stuff. And it ends up painting this narrative that it's representative of the entire group. Do you find that sometimes we have to like actually get more people that are probably a little bit much more careful with the way that they conduct themselves outside of just like being so good at the game?
Yeah, I mean, this is a topic that's come up quite a bit recently. And, it's one of the things that I've been preaching to people as well. It's that, The toughest thing about it is because this is new and a lot of people who are getting thrust into the limelight are, fairly young, relatively young, early 20s and stuff.
True.
And I always describe the 20, like I said, I'm an old man, so I can talk about it this way, but I always describe the 20s as kind of like being this age where, you feel indestructible, right? Like, nobody should be able to tell you what to do kind of thing. There's a lot of that kind of mentality in there. And so a lot of people don't like being told, you got to be careful what you say. You can't act the way that you can around your friends, et cetera, et cetera. But right. And the funny thing about it is they talk about that, but then, at the same time, you look at things like traditional sports, every athlete has to go through like these publicity trainings and stuff like that, right? Like when you become a public figure, you just have to realize that is a position that you're put in, and with it just inherently comes a lot of responsibility. And so when you get put into, there's a lot of things that I used to say that I can't say anymore. But the thing about it is, it's not like I miss it. That's the thing. It's like, it's not even really much about policing people. It's just about being respectful, right? During commentary, during the early days, we used to use a bunch of terms that are just absolutely taboo. And nowadays, they're taboo nowadays. And I used to say them all the time because they were just part of the lingo. And I've dropped a lot of those phrases, and it hasn't hurt me at all. Like, I don't miss them.
Yeah, I understand that. I could totally understand it. I think it comes with age, and it comes with also understanding and being mature enough to be courteous. Because, like you mentioned, and I think that the fighting game community in general, a lot of fighting game fans hate the idea of being compared to traditional sports. But I think the parallels are right then and there. They're such easy comparisons, especially when you want things to grow. And I don't think it's just exclusive to fighting games. I think it happens with all facets of competitive gaming. Esports is like what people usually call it, but competitive gaming as a whole. Halo has gone through that, the whole FPS genre, a lot of the League of Legends crowds and Dota crowds, a lot of those MMO crowds as well. You could even argue like competitive card games, for stuff like that. Yeah. There's all very similar themes and facets and really kind of like, approaches to how they present themselves. And I think that, if you're getting involved with a lot of these companies, I could assume like they want to look good and they want to present something great. And I don't think they want to get into a lot of craziness when things go down. But again, I find that sometimes with the fighting game community, it gets reported on so much exclusively just to them or just to that like facet of gaming that it becomes like the narrative is like, oh, they're the problem child sometimes. I don't necessarily think that's the case, but usually I think it's a constant back and forth. Do you feel like sometimes there needs to be a little bit much more reflectiveness from people rather than just getting like, I'm not saying like wilding out, but like really kind of, just feel like they have to defend fighting games or just their community and stuff without actually looking at the full picture?
Yeah, it's interesting because it's a weird topic because, I don't want to. Yeah, exactly. Because there's talking about, cleaning things up and all this stuff. But, at the same time, I don't exactly want that to happen. One of the nice things about the fighting game community is that the personalities are so vibrant, that the people are so. Yeah. And just the fact that, we're like the fighting game community, I like to associate more with because like the way that the audience goes nuts and like the pop-offs and everything like that in the FGC. Yeah, in the FGC, it's just on another level, I feel like, than it is in a lot of other esports, and I love that kind of thing. And, I don't know if maybe the articles that are written about pop-offs make him seem a little bit like, bad, or if people look at it bad. But if that's the case, I don't care because for me, I want to keep that. So as much as I want to like remove certain language and certain words that can offend people, at the same time, I don't want to sanitize the FGC to the point where we lose our soul or lose our personality. You know what I mean? So I want to keep a lot of that stuff. And if people don't like that kind of aspect of it, well, then there's nothing that we could do about it. But, focusing on any sort of negative aspects about players in articles and stuff like that. That's just news. People want to talk about that. It's stuff to report about. You don't ever want to have an article that says so-and-so is a really nice guy, You know what
I think it is though, James? I think it comes from a lot of people that just don't understand fighting games or just understand that section or aspect of it. Because a lot of those people that ended up reporting on stuff either aren't involved with it. They're only looking at the outside and just going on first glance with stuff. Right. But I think also just understanding the subculture of it. Like, to me, I've always looked at the fighting game community, or just fighting games as a genre in general, kind of like an old school Shaw Brothers movie. Like, again, I don't know how much you're into kung fu movies, but like I watch a lot of old school like 70s, 80s kung fu movies, and it reminds me of like, you know, the different clans and stuff at war with each other. It kind of reminds me of that. It's kind of fun to think of it like that. But there's that idea of authenticity, like what you keep referring to, I feel like is very important also, because every single genre of gaming and every single type of like competitive community has that. But I feel like they mostly get ignored in favor of other things because of the way that it's usually reported on, the way that it's usually viewed on overall, especially now these days, more so than anything else. But I want to shift gears because I think there's something also you brought up that's interesting that we should talk about, because obviously it's a big thing that you're involved with, commentary. Because I don't think a lot of people could really get into commentary and make it good and make it fun and interesting and also attractive to watch or be part of or listen in on. And you're obviously a master of that because you've been doing it for so long. And to me, commentary with fighting games, I think, is the more exciting of all the genres of competitive gaming. You know, more fun and exciting than first-person shooters, than League of Legends, because really, in essence, when you look at a fighting game, it's just two people going at it, or sometimes four, depending on like 2-on-2. Things get crazy out here sometimes, but in essence, it really is a one-on-one fight. It's kind of like a boxing match and stuff. For you, having done commentary for so many years now, do you feel like things have changed over time, or like what is it that some of the better aspects for commentating fighting game tournaments and stuff for you? Like, what's your favorite aspect of it?
I mean, my favorite thing, honestly, about fighting game community commentary is that, you know, we don't have any particular style that pervades throughout the FGC. You know, sometimes when you watch a few other esports, you know, a lot of the commentators have very similar cadence. They kind of talk. They sound very similar to each other, etc. The one thing that I like about the fighting game community is like the way that I commentate. Even I commentate with Ultra David, right? He's the guy that I commentate with a lot, and he doesn't commentate like I commentate. We have very different styles, and we're very different than, say, a Tasty Steve or an IFC Yipes or a Chris Matrix, you know, or a Persia, or, you know, any one of these commentators that jump on there. We all have a very distinct style, and that's kind of one of my favorite things. I find that when I'm paired with different people, like I have to commentate differently every time I get paired with someone else. And I love that because it brings out a lot more, you know, styles and it brings a bigger variety, and it allows people to really, you know, if you like a specific kind of commentary, you'll probably find it in the FGC. True. You know, if you don't like the way my commentary is, there's a lot of people out there who don't like my commentary, right? But that's fine because there's so many people out there that can cover what it is that you enjoy out of commentary. And, you know, that's like my favorite thing about fighting game commentary is that it is so varied, that there are so many different styles, and you have the people who are super raw, and, you know, you have the people who are just hilarious, like IFC Yipes, you know, and, you know, you have the very knowledgeable guys like Jakejames, for example. And, you know, and then sometimes you pair Jakejames with Yipes, like for Dragon Ball Fighters, and it's like, it turns out amazing, you know, and it's just like, that's the coolest thing about it is you get all these different pairings and different styles, and you can get a lot of different tastes in the fighting game community. And I love that a lot about the fighting game community commentary.
I could definitely feel you on that. Like, to me, I always akin the commentary for most fighting game tournaments that I've seen or that I've watched online to something like WWE programming, like a little bit like the commentary that they do, because the personalities are so sometimes over the top or just fun and interesting to listen to while you're watching the game. Like to me, every time I listen to somebody commentate, whether it's you, whether it's Yipes or anybody else on the mic, I always think of like either Vince McMahon with Jerry the King Lawler. Like, I always like harken back to that. It's always fun to think of that because somebody's got to be the commentator. Somebody's got to explain stuff to the crowd that's watching it right now, even though it's an FGC crowd, you know, paying attention to the matches and stuff. But like, there's always like those roles that I see a lot of you guys play, and sometimes there's just magic that happens on the mic. What was your favorite, like your favorite person to really commentate with thus far that you could think of?
I mean, obviously, I've been commentating with Ultra for a very, very long time. So commentating with him is very natural. It's very flowing, and it's like we know each other so well. So there's just this great. Like, it's so comfortable commentating with him. But I will admit that one of my favorite people to commentate with is IFC Yipes. Like, Yipes is just, oh my gosh. Like, he pulls something out of me that usually that few other commentators get. Like when I commentate with him, I get much more relaxed and I get looser and I say a lot more just like irreverent things. And, it's so much fun commentating with him because he's so energetic. And as a commentator, it's actually easy to get swallowed up by him because you just love sitting there listening to him, but, sometimes, but that's what's kind of makes it fun is that, you want to keep up with him a lot of the times. And so it makes you think quicker and think in different directions and stuff. And it's just so cool. It's a lot of fun. Yeah, exactly.
I think that's pretty fun. And I think that in the end, the audience wins overall, especially the people on stream that are listening to that. Like when the commentary is going on, right? How does that usually work at an event? Because from my experience, having gone to a couple tournaments, I haven't gone to any like huge tournaments. I think I went to Evo East one time, but I never really kind of got into that like whole section of like really checking out that part of the culture until much later on. How does it work when it comes to commentary like at big events like Evo? Is like the crowd in the audience like really listening to that, or is it really the commentary just for the people on stream? Because I never really understood that.
It depends on the event. So it's different for every event. A lot of the times the commentary is not piped into the audience, mostly because they're worried about giving away too much information, right? Because sometimes when you're playing fighting, it's something that you forgot to look at the opponent's meter. You forgot they have a super filled up. So, you throw a fireball from a screen away and then that one just forgot, and then they super you from across the screen, and you're like, "Oh my god!" But then
does that also become distracting also for the players? Like I can imagine when you're on that top tier level of play, like you don't besides the crowd screaming at you, you don't want any of the distractions going on.
Right. And that's the thing. Now, some players have said that they're concentrating so hard that they don't even hear it. And a lot of times the speakers can be oriented in a way that it's for them, the commentators are much more muffled, right? So a lot of events do pump the commentary into the crowd. And it is becoming more common, to be honest with you. It is definitely becoming more common. But a lot of times, some events will even pump the commentary into the crowd only in between matches. But when the match starts, they pull it back and stuff like that. So it really just depends on the event and the venue itself, whether or not you can hear the commentary. But like I said, it started out mostly as no, the audience couldn't hear it, but it's moving little by little to more that, more events have it so that the commentary is pumped to the crowd.
Yeah, I can imagine, like, especially now with certain tournaments being shown on, like, ESPN and then other places all over the place. I feel like that's going to change and evolve over time, and I think it's only going to get better. I think, like, you guys are going to have a lot of really interesting things to work with as we kind of move past, like, 2019.
Yeah. One of the interesting things was at the very last EVO that was, not this last year, but the previous year in 2017, it was on ESPN, but we had 2 commentators for ESPN. We had 2 commentators for the stream, and then we had 2 in-house commentators. So we actually had 3 sets of commentators for Street Fighter V for all 3 different audiences, So it depends. Like I said, it just depends on the event, on how it works. So it's pretty crazy.
I think that's definitely crazy. That sounds like everybody's getting a little something fun. So definitely sounds like a real trip of stuff. But James, thank you for chatting it up with me on this episode. We're going to talk some more. We're going to talk a little bit more on EX mode for everybody that supports the show on Patreon. Guys, if you're listening to this now, let me know what's really good in the comment section below if you guys have been enjoying this entire discussion. James, where can everybody find you right now? You're on the socials, right?
Yeah. So obviously on Twitter, I'm just at Jakejames. Actually, Jakejames is where you can find me on just about everything. So JCHENSOR on Twitter, on Twitch, as well as Instagram as well. However, I'm also part of the Ultra Chen TV group, which is me and Ultra David, my commentary partner, where we do content on Twitch as well. So we do have a twitch.tv/Ultra Chen TV, and then also youtube.com/Ultra Chen TV is where like all of the stuff that I put on there. And I put a lot of like educational stuff there, teaching people how to play fighting games at a beginner level, and a lot of history stuff. And, I try my best to cater to newcomers and beginners in the content that I do.
That's pretty cool. There's going to be links to all that stuff down below in the description box, guys. Go check it out when you can if you're not already checking it out already. Send James some owl hugs. Send over to Ultra David over some owl hugs. Send him some owl hugs. That's what we do here on the show. We go over there and send a bunch of owls and stuff. But James, thank you again for chatting up with me on this episode. Guys, let me know what's good in the comment section down below. Don't forget to leave a like on this video and also subscribe to my channel here on YouTube, and also check out some of the other episodes we have of the show. There's a lot here for you guys to love. And of course, please check out the show on Patreon. Consider pledging over there. We're going to get a bunch of bonus extra stuff that you guys are going to be able to check out, including this upcoming episode of EX Mode where I'm going to be talking more with James. So we're going to dive into a couple interesting things. But anyway, I will talk to you guys again very soon. Peace out and stay epic, everybody.